Hello, in this video I'll build the 1998 Ford Escort Custom on the TT02 chassis. So you get most of the things you'll need in the kit, but also you will need a steering servo that you'll need to supply yourself, an ESC or electronic speed controller, a receiver and transmitter unit, some LEDs and a switch, which did prove to be a little bit tricky later on, and I was very naive and didn't understand. You'll also need some kind of battery. The kits themselves are really comprehensive. They've got everything that you would need to build the basic shell of the car, the chassis, the bodywork, but I would suggest going through, checking everything, and read the book at least 2 or 3 times, because there were still steps that I missed. There's even a page at the back of the book that you can go through and double check everything off. These kits generally have 3 main parts bags labelled A, B and C. There is also often a bag of plastic bushings that I swapped out for bearings. There are some other things that you can change, like having oil-filled shocks, but I just went with the standard spring dampers. So being that I know very little about how this all works, I cracked open the book, got open the appropriate parts bags into my little parts tray there, and just started to follow step by step. The little ratcheting screwdriver was a lifesaver. If you are building kits, I do highly recommend getting one. It wasn't very expensive, $10 from Bunnings if you've got a Bunnings. If not, Amazon's your friend. When I was assembling these components, it's important for me to point out I'm using a grease called, I think it's Inox MX6, which is a synthetic grease. There is grease supplied in the kit, you don't need to go and buy your own. Just use plenty on all mating surfaces to make sure that your differentials, gearboxes, drivetrains all run smoothly. This stuff I think was from a fishing shop, it cost about $8 a tube. Highly recommend it, although it does have a slightly funny smell. Point you have to test all the electronics and center the servo, which is basically just plug it in, turn it on, it'll go back to its center position. But you do need it centered, otherwise your steering won't be set correctly and you'll be correcting it all the time. Don't ask me how I know that, but it's important. Even though this is the second car I built, I still found it really fiddly to get the wheels properly mounted. There's a little pin that has to go through the axle, and that index is in a little cutout on the back of the wheel. I found it really hard to get them in and not misalign the little pin, so just be aware of that. These chassis are meant to be used with a variety of different body configurations, so you'll need to check the manual specific to your car as to which configuration of wheelbase, of ride height, of tracking width that you'll need. I was really lucky that this version of the car is just basically standard but long wheelbase, so that was easy to follow in the book. One thing I did need to reiterate though is that you do get spares in Tamiya kits, so don't get disheartened if you finish up and find that you've still got spare screws, shafts, bits and pieces. It does actually say in the book you get spares. Then you have magic. Something that does get somewhat overlooked is cable management. In the centre of that car is an exposed spinning drive shaft for the four-wheel drive system, so it's really important to try and think about ways that you can stop cables from getting caught up in it. One of the things I did was use the zip ties over the battery hold down for the receiver antenna. That way I knew it wasn't going to come into contact. You can also see a little yellow 3D printed bracket, because really that receiver is not the right kind of receiver you'd use for a car, but it's all I had and I'm tight. Now they'll refer to the bodywork online as either Lexan or polycarbonate. This was by far the most daunting part of the whole process. The bottom of the body is not cut out. There are some lines on the body kit that you have to score and cut along. The first time I did this, I used scissors that you can see there. The second time I put a brand new blade in my little hobby knife and I just scored along the bottom edge and then went back and forth bending, snapping out little sections until I had basically the shape that I wanted, and then I also went back and sanded it. This is not the time to rush. Really do take your time. It's better to cut it and leave it a little bit long and sand it to fit. I even used a bit of sandpaper over the spray can to do the inner wheel arches and round off corners. Don't let your scissors get to the end of their blade when you're cutting, because that creates little star chips. I'm downright terrible with applying stickers. What I didn't show here is that I've actually been and washed the inside of the car body in the sink with some dish soap and dried it, or rinsed it and dried it thoroughly. Now I'm cutting out the window masks. They're already marked for you. You've just got to be super careful. Cut them a little bit big, test fit them on the inside, and then there's a technique described in the book to basically cut out a strip of the backing from the middle, get the whole thing situated, and then peel it off. Don't worry, I still managed to stuff it up, but if you take your time, you can recover from it. At this point, I realised this car is not meant to take LED lights like I planned. So I had to devise a secret cunning plan, which was to mask off the inside of the headlights and then get to work in CAD, designing and 3D printing some LED light buckets that will hopefully follow the contour of the front and back bumper, and then find a way to test that they will actually fit on. It was mildly successful. Not my best work, but there you go. While the window masking is nearly done, I just want to say you have to paint the car in reverse. You paint it on the inside and you paint the top colour first for 4 or 5 coats, then white, and then black on the inside. And then you can take the masks off and smoke your mirrors and windows. And out of sheer annoyance, because I kept asking people what colour paint they use, this colour paint is PS59 Dark Metallic Blue. I missed out on showing this properly. I've actually got a paint lid sticky tape to the bottom so I can spin it around to try and get paint into these little areas, which is quite tricky. I don't want to get any runs. So far I think I've done okay, but this paint takes quite a few coats to cover. I'm getting coats heavier as I go, but it's these spots here where you almost need the thing flipped up the other way to be able to get paint in there. Really on the home stretch for the body now. The stickers are definitely the hardest part. I would recommend a combination of using the wet method. We use some soapy water spray on the back and like a cotton bud to squeegee out the residue. By far the most difficult ones were the window surrounds though. Take your time. There is also nothing that says you have to use all of the stickers. I didn't do it on the Escort, or first Escort, and I certainly didn't do it on this. There are some that I just left off. I tried to make it look like a road going car rather than a rally car. So do what you want. It says custom on the box, right? I do worry that I'm not explaining well enough to newbies like me. You have to cut them out. Get a sharp knife and a brand new pair of scissors that you are not going to use for anything else with really, really fine blades. I went to a craft shop and got some. You will cut them out yourself. They're not like peel and stick. It's not like Transformers. The window surrounds are difficult because they're fiddly, they're thin, and they go in multiple pieces. So you've got to put, top and bottom on, and then you've got to use the two side parts to try and get them to line up. The good part about it is because they're in multiple parts, you can have a little bit of margin of error. Another good thing is if you've got stickers that need to go down in a little groove, get a hairdryer, use it on low heat, not a heat gun, but a hairdryer, and warm up the sticker, and then use a cotton bud with the end cut off to just press things down into grooves and crevices and whatnot. Something else I've discovered is that Tamiya kits use two different kinds of paint, and so thank you to RC Kicks and Mark Bryan RC and Quiet RC for pointing this out. I had got the same colour paint for the rear spoiler for this car, and I'd had a family member actually bring it up from our local state capital. They brought it down to Bumfudge, South Australia for me to spray the bumper, and at this point I had sprayed it. And I will fast forward in a moment to what happened next. So disaster has struck. The paint for the rear wing arrived yesterday and I very quickly just painted it last night, and it is not a match at all. Despite the cans looking like they're a match, but it's not a match at all. I think part of it is that the rear wing is white and I didn't paint it black first, which makes this a lot brighter than the rest of this, whereas this was painted blue, then white, then black on the inside, and I think that's made it darker. I think that might be the issue. So I've got to try and find a creative solution for that. I think I have an idea. See how it goes. Luckily I did have a solution. I discovered the paint washes off in isopropyl alcohol, and I also discovered that I had a fresh tin of matte black Rust-Oleum paint. And as you can see, the results didn't look too bad. Definitely on the home straight now. You can see I'm wiring up my very own loom for LED lighting. I had some LEDs left over from my previous build that I could use for the front. They were white and blue, but I wanted to get some LEDs for the back that were red to go in the brake lights. I had masked off the brake lights at the back of the car, so I asked my friend Lee if I could have a couple of LED bulbs, and he graciously supplied them. This is me making 3 looms. Each of the looms are in series, but the 3 looms joined together are wired in parallel. So basically you have 2 LEDs in series in one loom, and then those 3 looms are wired in parallel. So from each loom, the positives and negatives are common together. They get soldered into a little servo plug, which then goes into my receiver controlled switch, which then goes into my receiver, and then I could map that switch or that channel to a switch on my transmitter, and that way there's a switch now that I can turn the lights on and off with. Although do be careful, if you turn off the transmitter without turning the light switch off, the lights will stay on. So don't want to do that, don't want to flatten your battery. As well as using offcuts to decide what colour I was going to paint the car, I also used them to test what kind of glue would stick to the paint without ripping the paint off if something went wrong. And I used that method to test how I would attach my 3D printed light buckets. My loom is in place. I am looming, but I need to stick the front light buckets to there, and I also need to paint. More way to go. In an hour I was finished. I built 2 cars in the space of 2 weeks. But I know what you're thinking. Okay, great. You can build a thing from a kit. It looks alright, but does it work? Well, yes. Yes, it does. Alright, so in the interest of proving to everyone that this is not in the radio control channel, not an RC channel, hashtag not an RC channel, that's the last one. Alright, I'm not doing any others. It was lovely. I got the Mark II Escort for Christmas. This is, I think, the Mark VII Escort. Beautiful looking car. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out. I'm not doing any others. That's it. Great experience. If you're looking for a cool hobby to get into, I can highly recommend it, but it's a bit too much of a rabbit hole for me, so I'm going to take my leave and stand back and let other people take over now. That's it for me.